here. I would like to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Dene and Cree people of the Fort Nelson First Nations, whose traditional territory is located at the heart of the Northern Rockies Regional Municipalities Administrative Center and the enduring presence of the Métis community. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually. It is also being streamed and recorded. Do we have any council additions? We have an addition tonight risen from our previous committee of the whole meeting, referring to the Grace Manors funding request. Anything from council or Mayor Fraser? Seeing none. Anything from the CAO for additions?
No, acting mayor.
All right, so I would like a motion to adopt the agenda as presented with the addition.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Roper, seconded by Councillor Souls. All in favor? Passed. We have a few minutes to adopt. Was there any? I would like to adopt them as a whole, unless there was anything that needed to be pulled out. Anybody notice any errors, remissions in the meeting minutes presented? Seeing none, I'd like to have them all adopted as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Roper, second by Councillor Enax. All in favor? Passed. And then do we have any business arising from the minutes? Anything noted from council or staff?
I have a couple of things.
Yes, Councillor Gerwing.
Sorry. So from the January 23rd, the Villers Medevac service, just an update on the letter that we were going to be writing. Where are we in that process?
So the letter hasn't been written. We've reached out to Paul Balali, who's the executive, I can't remember his title, but basically right below the president, Leanne Heppel, to have an initial conversation to hopefully get a bit more information to form the letter, because the letter was intended to go to the minister. Pardon me. We've also received an update on the Susan Byrne letter. So that was the patient that had gone by ground. And we'd hope that there might be some findings that we could communicate to that. But what has surfaced is that BC Emergency Health Services didn't actually refer that to their patient care quality office. So trying to find out why and initiate that, since apparently that didn't occur from October. She did have a response from Northern Health, and it was lengthy, and we'll share that with council directly. But there wasn't a whole lot of conclusive findings, unfortunately, from the patient care quality response from Northern Health. So where the biller's letter directly applies is around her transfer experience, and there's still some gaps in that story. So yeah.
Was the intent of the letter though to ask, I mean, that resident was a specific example, but I thought in general we were trying to determine why Villers was not being utilized. And then we were citing this as one example that we saw it could have been, but we weren't focusing on that in this letter, because we have already sent a letter focusing on that concern with that resident, right? Yeah. Okay.
And just to add that we're meeting with BC EHS, the local unit chief, and the regional Jonathan on this Thursday morning. So that's another piece of it too, that we're just trying to put some pieces of the puzzle together, I guess, just so we can, if we're, for lack of better words, armed with more information, it puts more teeth, I guess, for lack of better words, in the letter that we want to get sent on behalf of council.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Fraser.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. So also from the January.
We're having troubles hearing you, Mayor Fraser.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Nothing yet.
I don't know what's going on.
Is
How about now? Can you hear me now?
there something on our end, maybe?
I mean, it's exactly the same as it was when in the last meeting. So I don't know what's happening.
Still nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Let me call back in.
There we go.
Ah!
Got you that time.
You got me there?
All good.
As soon as I hit the leave webinar, now all of a sudden I scared it, I guess. I've got a couple of things. First thing was, did the procedure bylaw just get caught up in the budget preparation time? So that's why it's not on today's agenda.
Yes, Mayor. The corporate service department's drinking from a fire hose right now. Like the majority of us right now with the budget process, trying to get that wrapped up. And the amount of discussion and potential changes, it was a bit more of a bigger undertaking than originally had thought. Once Jay can speak to it a little bit more if she wishes, but in conversations with Jaylene and her group, when they started digging into some of those changes, it wasn't just as simple as a copy paste and some simple edits. It was a significant amount of work in the background that wasn't necessarily anticipated at first when we committed to getting something back to council.
Okay, thanks. So you're still working on that. Maybe in March we'll get it back.
Yeah, we had notably, we had 3 new staff in 3 weeks in corporate services, which while it was fantastic, we wanted to ensure that their orientation was fulsome as well. So that took a significant amount of capacity.
All right, thank you. Next thing I was wondering about, did we get the application in for the Destination Development Fund, right? So that was due February the 9th. I know you were all working hard at trying to do that, but that, if everybody remembers, that's the 100% funding for the park upgrade.
Yes, so we did get that in. I think it was submitted on the 8th. We have received confirmation that they received it on time. Mayor.
Perfect. Thank you. And the last thing I had is I was just wondering, we're meeting with Fort Nelson First Nation Council the day after tomorrow, I think. And I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for us to pull that Heritage Week proclamation and take it there so that we can maybe do a joint signing while we're at that breakfast meeting.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I had.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my mic on for any of that.
Oh, good. I was wondering, I thought I lost the sound.
So I called for any public comments. If there's none online, I'll give a second now that they can hear me. All right, we'll move on to reports, bylaws, and policies. Administrative report number 7/23. Mrs. Adhikari.
Good evening, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. We have received a development variance permit application, which is basically requesting a variance to the sign bylaw, and that is associated with the development permit application that was approved on January 23rd of 2023 for the McDonald's restaurant and a drive-through business. Overall, 29 signs have been proposed and are categorized under the fascia, freestanding, and projecting signs. As you can see in the report, all those numbers are mentioned, and as well as the sign bylaw regulations has been mentioned. So if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer. If there are any.
Did we have any questions on the proposed variance application? All right.
I have a question.
Yes, Mayor Fraser.
Thank you. So this is not the first drive-through restaurant that's been located in the community, probably since the sign bylaw was put in. So I'm wondering, what we did with the other 2 drive-in, did they apply for a variance, or did they limit the amount of signs that they had on the property to be in compliance with the sign bylaw, or what did we do there? Does anybody remember?
Okay.
Ms. Thompson's going to come forward to answer that for us.
So I did look back to see what had been done for the Tim Hortons and for Robin's Donuts, because those would be probably the most two recent for franchises. So the Robin's Donuts, sorry?
The A&W.
Oh, A&W, we just did a replacement recently for their signage, but it was a like for like, so there was no difference in the amount of signages or types of signage. The Robin's Donuts was developed around the time when the sign bylaw was actually going in front of council for reading, so it wasn't fully enacted at that point. And the Tim Hortons was included in the development permit application. So there was consideration in the report for the signage in that report. So it was approved under the development permit, and our sign bylaw does provide for that. So provided it's been approved in the development permit, there'd be no need to bring it back to council for a DDP if the signs exceeded. In this case, we didn't have the information from McDonald's for the development permit, so it wasn't included.
Thank you. That explains it.
Any further questions? All right. We have a recommendation. Do I have a motion?
I'd make the motion option 1 that staff proceed with notification to adjacent property owners of the details of development variance permit application DVP 2301 per section 499 of the Local Government Act and Northern Rockies Regional Municipality procedures.
Thank you, Councillor Roper. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Enax. Any discussion? All in favor? Passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 6.2. Administration Report 8/23, 2023 second quarter grant in aid requests.
So the report basically describes where we are. So we've had 3 applications for the second quarter grant and aid. They all meet the eligibility requirements, and it's recommended that they be approved.
Thank you, Ms. McIver. Any comments or questions from council? Mr. Mayor?
I'm good, thanks.
Barring none, there is a recommendation on the table. Would any council?
I'd make that motion then that the 3 applications for the 2023 second quarter grant and aid program be approved in principle.
All right, motion by Councillor Gerwin, second by Councillor Roper. All in favor? Moved, carried. Already into our correspondence. We have a few items listed. Is there any that council would like to bring forward for discussion? We have the letter from Jamie Smith, Fort Nelson Minor Hockey Association U15 coordinator, request for sponsorship. I'd like to make a motion to bring that one forward for discussion, please. Seconded by Councillor Souls. Do we need an all in favor for discussion items? All right, all in favor? Carried. So they are requesting, get over to it. A sponsorship for their tournament, bringing in a bunch of out of town teams. Would council like to? Thank you. I got her. They're looking for a donation and prize, cast donations, food donations, coupons, anything of the like. Is council willing to put forward a donation for minor hockey? Yeah, you speak to that, Councillor Enax.
I spent 10 years at the arena helping with the minor hockey. I know one thing that's always come up an issue every tournament, every time there's teams out of town, they're asking for, donate a prize, a cash donation or a food donation, but the coupon donation. Maybe we could pass on some swimming coupons and keep that pool open for a few hours in the evening for them.
I do know that minor hockey has used up their grant and aid process. Like that would be typically where we'd send them for sponsorships, and it's not something council's traditionally done in the past. That we're always cognizant about other groups coming for sponsorships and donations. I just thought we might want to discuss this one, and I think the idea of possibly giving coupons for swimming would be a good idea. Anything else from council or mayor?
Yeah, this can't be the first time that that this kind of thing has happened, that we've already given a grant aid to an organization that then comes back and asks for a sponsorship for something different. And I'm just wondering, what have we done in the past? Have we included them in the grant aid? Have we said no? What's been the history around this?
So for years and years and years, the practice was that the NRM didn't entertain sponsorship requests unless it was for a conference or an event such as like the UBCM convention or NCLGA's convention. It's some of those larger scale, just like the AgroConnect conference had approached council and council gave consideration. But when you think about sporting events and things like that, in past terms, councils have realized that can get quite overwhelming when you receive so many event type sponsorship requests. And so typically the group would be directed towards grant and aid. And in this case, of course, minor hockey's already accessed their grant and aid. But I mean, having said that, it's not a written policy. It was just past practice. And there was an exception made last year and the year before with the Rotary Club's Fishing Derby to sponsor an app for their registration. So I think, you know, like I said, there's no formal policy to guide council in this case, unfortunately. And so it's at council's discretion until something can be developed.
Yes, Councillor Goodwin.
I'm wondering if there's anything in our, what do we call it? Our gift. Yeah, we have like gifts that we buy once a year or whatever, and we use for if dignitaries come in or something like that. I'm really concerned about contributing to tournaments or special events because we have a lot of them in our community, and you know, it could get to be a lot. But I also want to really support events that are taking place in our community. But I think we need a policy on it. I think we also did the grizzly on the ice surface. That was in addition to the grant and aid, wasn't it? Or was that part of it?
It was a waiver of a fee in that case. There's usually advertising revenue associated with it, and council in that case decided to waive the fee. So they were able to put their logo in ice at the cost for them to provide the logo, but no additional funds were exchanged.
Okay, thanks. And there's lots of curling bonspiels, and so I'm really conflicted on this one. I really am. But I was thinking if we had something in our, what do we call that fund? It's not a fund, but where we pre-purchased pictures or whatever it is, and could we donate something for the raffle table? Or if we as a council don't want to set a precedent just as individuals, do we want to go outside of that and do something like that? There's a few ways that we could still contribute but not set a precedent. My thoughts.
Yeah, I'm too cautious of the precedent setting. Being that it's a finals, it's kind of a bigger special event. It's for the U15 finals for the year-end tournament. We could maybe cite that as a special reasoning, but I just thought it would worth a conversation of council. Yes, Councillor Dickey.
So it's actually really quite an exciting tournament because that under 15 teams, there's 2 of them, and they haven't lost a game, and they're first in the NRL series. So they've got a lot of support with this tournament, and it'd be nice to be able to do something, but I too would prefer to see some sort of policy in place about what we contribute to over and above the grant and aid.
So if I can.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I think it's the Peace River Regional District that does grant and aids, but then they also have a special policy that's part of the policy, grant and aid policy, that looks at special events like this that are either at a provincial or national sort of scale, where they can they have a pot of money that they can use to that. And perhaps that's what a policy needs to be developed around, is that, yeah, we've got our grant and aid process, and I'm also reluctant to go away. You have that process in place for a reason, and it's been in place for a long time, but we might have to perhaps change that policy a little bit to look at very special events, you know, that we consider to be significant, and this might be one of them. The question that I had for staff was around if you waive fees, such as the idea of having the pool open, how is that accounted? How do we account for that? Is that just an internal transfer, or does it go to the grant and aid? How do you look after that from a budget perspective? Or do you?
It's well, there's different ways. It depends on how it's done, I think, because, yeah. Go ahead.
So currently, we have the grant and aid policy sitting in draft, as well as the fee waiver, facility fee waiver policy sitting in draft.
Right.
Currently, if a grant and aid applicant is asking for a relief from fees to rent the community hall, what we do is we actually do an internal bookkeeping process that accounts for those costs in the grant and aid budget as an expense and a revenue to the rec center. So it's a wash, but the cost does go against the grant and aid budget. The intention is that when the two policies are formalized and adopted, there wouldn't be an expense to the grant and aid budget for any of those fee facility waivers. They would probably, Trevor's left the meeting, our director of finance. I assume there'd have to be a method of accounting for those fee waivers, but it wouldn't be an expense to grant and aid as it is currently today.
And then there's an option to coupons, which is a different mechanism. Again, right, that was my thing, is just there's not just one single way of doing it. There's a couple different ways it can be done. And it is tracked internally. It just depends on which way we actually provide it.
All right.
I like the idea of opening the pool to these guys. If this age group would use it, that's what I'd like to see us do.
Yeah, Councillor Dickey.
I think I like the coupon ID also if they use it during the operating hours, to not have the staff have to come in after hours, but maybe giving them a coupon in their package to say your entrance fee into the pool is free up until closing hours. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just and the other challenge with pool is we do have some additional lifeguards that we've recently trained up, but they're not necessarily on deck yet. And just the challenges with the staffing piece too, just around if we were to open up outside of our normal hours. So that's just as a consideration.
Well, I'm with the peace of mind to reluctantly say no to sponsoring because of the lack of policy in place. But anything else from council? All right, I guess we'll move on to 7.2, fish stocking. Any discussion on that one?
Yeah, I'd like to move this for discussion.
All right, we have a motion from Mayor Fraser, second by Councillor Souls. All in favor? Carried. We will discuss 7.2, fish stocking.
Thank you. Did anybody know? Did anybody know we were being measured?
No.
So in other words, the letter from the fellow says that they've quit stocking these the Beaver Lake and some of the borrow pits along the highway, which are advertised as potential, fishing spots, and particularly in the case of number 8 there, it's within not a difficult drive from the community, which may give some folks who may not get an opportunity to get out and fish to actually get out and experiencing fishing. And this fellow's letter says that he was the decision maker, and based on a lack of use, among some other things, he decided not to continue that fish program. But if we didn't know we were being measured, and particularly in the last couple of years when there hasn't, for some people, there haven't been a lot of extra dollars for gasoline to be able to go do this kind of thing. The last time they stocked was 2018. I just see it as a potential loss to the area if the province is still stocking in other parts of the province. Once more, it's a situation where we lose because we're so far from the central the central group that's performing the function. Just wondering what everybody else's thoughts are.
My thoughts on that, I agree with that. If it was last stocked in 2018, the oil pits, I happen to know some of the people that stopped there and caught little fishes there in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it hard to believe that it's 100% die out from oxygen when they're still catching fishes. Strange to me. It's also one of the easiest places. I mean, those oil pits are one of the easiest places to stock of any place that the government has to stock fishes. It's right beside the highway. It's very accessible. I don't want to let go of it either for the same reason.
Yes,
I just
CO
want to
Barry.
clarify, because I know he talks about the provincial rep talks to 2018, but when we look at the Freshwater Fisheries Society BC website, actually oil pits 1, 4, and 8 were stocked in 2021. There was no stocking that occurred last year, but those 3 were stocked in 2021. And then the same 3 were stocked in 2020, and then again in 2019 with upwards anywhere from 500 to 665 rainbows. And then in 2018, there was burrow pits 1, 2, 4, and 8 and Beaver Lake, which were stocked. So he might have been referencing Beaver Lake for 2018 the last one. But the other burrow pits, are 3 of them anyway, 1, 4, and 8 were stocked in 21, nothing done in 22, just to clarify that for council.
Yes, Councillor Enex.
And I agree with Mayor Fraser and Councillor Souls as well. It's one more thing that essentially we're losing because of our distance from everywhere else. I'd be curious he states in the letter his count as to how many people go fishing. We have game cameras on our property, and I know when it hits 20 below, they don't work very good. And I have a whole bunch of 18-year-olds that go out there ice fishing all the time.
Yeah, I too question the numbers. I know a lot of people that go fishing out there. So like, is this just an annual count? I was trying to briefly read over it again, but I think some more correspondence back and forth trying to maintain this stocking efforts, which should be brought forward at least from council. Like I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter to try to encourage forestry or the ministry to continue with these efforts, and cite, maybe we can get some community members to cite their use of these areas, and try to make a good case to keep them open, keep them getting stocked. So I made a motion.
I would second that motion.
Second by Councillor Roper. Discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor? Carried.
Thank you
very much. We have 7.3, letter from Joel McKay. 7.4, letter from Kristen Clausen. 7.5, letter from Colleen Neese. 7.6, letter to Ryan Stately. And 7.7, letter to Floyd Bertrand. And 7.8, letter to Steve F. Kozulki. Apology for the pronunciation. Any of these like to? Yes, Mr. Mayor Fraser.
Thank you. I'll move that correspondence items 7.2 to 7.8 be received for information.
Thank you very much. And a seconder on the motion. Seconded. Councillor Roper, all in favor? Thank you very much. All received. We have councillor information packages. We have 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 for information. Accept those for information. I forget, do we need a motion seconder for accepting
Yeah.
information? All right,
Yeah.
so we got a motion from Councillor Souls, seconded by Councillor Enax. All in favor? Passes. And into new business, including additions. We have the mayor's discretionary account added in for review. That would be the final from our departing mayor. And into 9.2 additions by mayor and councilors. I think we had any.
I had a question about 9.1 if I could.
Oh, yep, sorry, we'll go to 9.1 for.
Thank you. And so my question is just one of being the new guy that first time I've seen this report. So is there an expectation that when these comes out, the mayor will speak to them? Just looking forward to what I might have to do in the future, and because I'll have to keep better records than I keep now.
So the mayor's discretionary account is simply any expenses against the mayor's discretionary budget. So it's not items that are funded through other council travel budgets or like UBCM or any of those formalized budgets. So in past, the mayor has spoken to some of the items if they begged more detail, but for the most part, what's on the report is pretty self-explanatory. So it's up to you how you'd like to present it. It was just something that was requested in the past term to be included on a quarterly basis. So.
Right. Yeah, and I don't have any trouble with the idea of the report. It's just which things apply to it and which don't. That'll be a learning opportunity for me, I guess. And so I'll sit with you, Jaylene, and maybe we can go over some of the things that are discretionary and some of the things that aren't. You know, they're already in the council travel budget.
All right, anything else on 9.1? All right, 9.2 into 9.3. We got Grace Manor Horizon report from our committee of the whole previously. And we have somebody who wanted to speak to this one specifically. They had a funding request proposed, an analysis presented. Councillor Gerwing.
So now's the time where we can make a motion to move
Yes.
forward with the Grace Manor funding request, yes? Okay,
Now's
so
your time.
we don't need any more discussion right at the moment. I'll put the motion on the floor and then, okay. So I would make a motion to approve Grace Manor's funding request in the amount of $25,000 as one-time funding.
Motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Roper. Do we have any discussion on the proposed motion?
Will we
All right,
decide
see.
how we're going to pay for it? So one of three options. It'll come out of reserves. It'll go, or two options, I guess, or it'll go into the budget, because at the budget time you determine whether or not you're going to raise taxes for it or whether you're going to cut services. So just wondering how we're going to pay for that.
Well, I could add that to my motion then, if I could add to my motion that and said funding to be taken from 2022 reserve fund.
I'll second that amendment.
Amended by
So just to clarify, general surplus.
General surplus?
is a- just to get
Change
the-
that again.
Sorry.
All
That's a
right, so
friendly-
the amended.
Friendly amendment.
So the amended motion being that we approve Grace Manor's funding request of $25,000 for a one-time fund coming from our general reserves fund for 2022. Surplus, sorry, general reserve surplus for 2022. And
So acting mayor, just a point of order, just from
Yes,
the perspective,
please.
so the amendment should be voted on first, right? That we're
Right.
adding that bit, and then the motion as amended gets voted on.
All right, so the amendment being adding the funding coming from our general surplus.
Correct.
Motion by Councillor Gerwing, seconded by Rob Fraser. All in favor of the amendment? Passes. And now all in favor of the original motion to grant Grace Manor with a $25,000 one-time funding request.
As
All in
amended.
favor? As amended, sorry. Yes. All in favor? Passes. Thank you. Clean and nice and simple. Thanks, guys. All right, moving on to section 10, standing items for discussion. Do we have any councillor reports? Councillor Souls has a report.
Just a couple of days ago, I attended the Agro Connect conference in Dawson Creek. It was quite a lot of fun for an agricultural guy to go to an agricultural conference. The overall structure, it was the first year that the Agro Connect was trying to pull together a broad variety of agricultural perspectives, small companies, large companies, and so on, to talk agriculture, so that some connections get made with the intent of strengthening issues around food security and food sovereignty. And I thought it was a fairly good mix of people. I know that our own Northern Rockies had a booth in the market that was there, and they had many. I can say we were well represented by Hillary and Gabrielle, and many discussions around vermicomposting and the Northern Rockies in general that took place. I personally walked the floor a lot and talked a lot, as I am prone to do, and made some good connections in both the world of some of the being able to help some of the small farmers and how to connect with others. But I also noticed that there was a great number of funding mechanisms that were presented there, the IAF and the BC Hydro funding opportunities for agricultural adventures and so on. I listened with great delight to Taylor give a presentation on the on the geothermal project and the potential that it has for agriculture. She did a good job of that, of condensing a 45-minute talk into 20 minutes. She can talk quite fast. It's good. And just overall, it was a good time. I can see that it was a first attempt, and I think that there will very likely be future ones that gather a broader representation of peoples.
Thank you, Councillor Souls. Any other councillor reports? Yes,
I have-
Councillor Gervin. Yeah, Mayor Fraser, we'll let you go, please.
Okay, so I would echo those comments from Councillor Souls. I also was at the Agro Connect conference. I think really the only thing, great start for them. I think the only thing that I would say is for the future, I think they need to connect, because most of these folks, I think, were hobby farmers, a little bigger than hobby farmers, but they're not. Even if you doubled or tripled the number of hobby farmers that are out there, they're not going to give us that food security that we're looking for on that scale. So I think somehow linking through this conference, linking sort of those small producers to some of the bigger producers, that making that linkage between them, maybe that farmer that's got two sections of land that he's farming has a small piece of land that just doesn't fit very well. There's a creek going through it, or he might be able to connect with some of these other smaller farmers. And so if they put out any kind of a feedback form, I think I'd like to mention that for future is having some portion of this that will bring the small producers together with the larger producers. So otherwise, I agree. It was a great start for them. I told just about anybody that was around that I was able to go to the first Premier's resource conference 20 years ago with Mayor Jarvis, and it started out about the same size, and now it's like 1,600 people going to it. So I sure would like to see it grow. I'd like to see a little bit more representation from the government agencies. Although the two that had the discussion around water rights and water registering your water, they were talking to a pretty hostile crowd, and they did pretty good for themselves when it comes to standing up and giving good reasons why it's important to register your water supply. So that was the Agro Connect conference. I also attended an NDIT just last week, NDIT orientation session as a new director for NDIT. I'm really happy to report they've got $501 million that they look after. This organization is growing bigger and big. About half of it, it's split about 50-50. Half of it is still the fund that they administer on our behalf as members of NDIT. The other half is third-party funds that they administer for BC Hydro and some of the other folks out there. So it was a very good orientation. I got to learn about the various departments at NDIT, and hopefully I'll be able to assist you and some of our staff with understanding all of the potential funding opportunities that they have. So that was really good. And then at the meeting of the 23rd, I talked about this BC Healthcare Alliance, which is a loose connection of mayors wanting to get together. Said I'd throw my name out there. They had a meeting on February the 3rd, and then they had a press release on February the 6th that basically said they're alive and well. They're looking for other mayors to participate around the province if they consider themselves rural in any way, shape, or form. The chair will be Everett Baker, who is the mayor of the city of Grand Forks. And, you know, the Kootenays are seeing wholesale shutdowns of their emergency departments in their hospitals. And so he saw it as being really important for him to take a lead, and everybody agreed that he would do that. So yeah, that press release is out there. I do have a copy of it, and would like to get it onto our website, you know, if I can. So those were the three main meetings that I attended since the last meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser. Councillor Darling.
Okay, on February the 3rd, I attended the Community Health Plan Steering Committee, and just to bring council up to date, the CT scanner revised business plan should have been submitted to Northern Health earlier this week. That's what I was told. I don't know if it actually went in or not. We continue to wait for the determination of which scanner Northern Health decides will be appropriate for Fort Nelson. That's still one more month to their anticipated date of their decision. The funding confirmation form remains outstanding. And just as a reminder to council, if the costs for the CT scanner and required renovations are not fully covered by sources outside of Northern Health, it would not be considered for Fort Nelson until possibly 2025 at the earliest at the starting point. A new doctor will be arriving early in April and has a 3-year commitment to the community. We're still waiting for the labor market study that Northern Health has committed to doing. And this is connected with, it's required for Dr. Fury's application to return to work in Fort Nelson this summer. The good news, X-ray position is filled. The lab is all caught up and currently is offering same day or next day service. So that's really exciting. Ultrasound was here February 6th to the 10th, and they're back again this week, actually, the 13th to the 17th. And Northern Health has hired a full-time rehab assistant. I have no idea what this person does, but of note is this is the first time in many, many years that this position has been filled. So there's some exciting stuff happening up at the hospital. So good news there. The community paramedic reports that the track social continues to be very popular. So that's weekly meet and greet at the track with 30 plus people attending. As well, she is offering a clinic at Grace Manor 2 to 3 times a month with all spots consistently being filled. And she's also doing presentations at Angus School and the public library on a variety of topics. Also on the 3rd, I attended the Harm Reduction Committee meeting. And organizations that are participating in this revamp committee include Fort Nelson First Nations, the Friendship Center, Fire Rescue, NRM staff, Northern Health, School District 81, the library, the community paramedic, and the group is hoping that the RCMP will soon be able to participate. And of note, in partnership with the Friendship Center, this group received funding in the amount of $34,000 for harm reduction community work. Moving forward, this group will be eligible for $20,000 annually in grant funding. And there will be a harm reduction van arriving in our community soon to provide services. As well, there will be a harm reduction vending machine available somewhere in the community, site to be determined. And if anyone or any group would like some information on what harm reduction is, this group is developing presentation materials and would be pleased to share or even do a presentation. I think there's some misinformation as to what harm reduction actually is. And so if anybody is at all interested, then I can connect you with this group. February the 7th, I met with the Rural and Remote Wellness Provincial Working Group of the CBSS Leadership Council, which is a provincial community stakeholder group committed to addressing the needs of seniors aging in rural and remote BC. Their mandate includes capacity building, network, collaboration, education, advocacy, and awareness, so that government, decision makers, and others better understand and act on the challenges faced by older adults living in rural and remote areas. I've been invited to participate in this group to represent the Northeast, and Margaret from Sons, which stands for Save Our Northern Seniors out of Fort St. John, and I will work together to provide this provincial group with the Northeast perspective. So that was exciting that we were thought of and included. As well, on the 7th, I met with the board of Grace Manor for their monthly board meeting. And as we've spoken about earlier, they have many challenges facing them from a financial perspective. And just wanted to highlight that they are a dedicated group of volunteers that are actively involved in creating the best possible living experiences for the residents at Grace Manor. And as I reported earlier, all suites are full with a waiting list. And February the 8th, I attended the Rural Coordination Center of BC Linked Sectors meeting. So a theme here, we're getting our position out throughout the province. So they had a presentation on the creation of a toolkit to support virtual care in rural and remote communities. And currently they provide the following virtual platforms. So Rudy is the general medicine emergency, which for those might not know that our hospital is using that. And at this provincial meeting, they actually cited Fort Nelson General Hospital's use of Rudy and how it has really, really helped our doctors, right? So when there's only 1 or 2 doctors in town, they can actually have a weekend or an evening where they don't physically have to be there. There's always a physical doctor on call in the community so that if something happens that Rudy can't deal with, and like Rudy isn't like artificial intelligence, it's a doctor at the other end, right? So anyways, and then I didn't know this, but so the Rural Coordination Center of BC, these are the people that have developed this, and it's really cool. So then they also developed a new one, which is called Mabel, and that's mother and babies, and then a third one, which they call Charlie, and then that's if we needed a pediatrician or something like that, then they would connect us with Charlie. So that I wanted to share that. And then February 9th, I attended my first BC Rural Health implementation meeting. Unfortunately, I had another commitment at the same time, so I just made the last 30 minutes of that meeting. But the agenda included discussion on recent activities around the media, the throne speech, stakeholders meetings, and ways to augment the existing papers. So I hope you all had a chance to read them. They were very well done and entitled Advancing Rural Health in BC. Yeah.
You've been very busy. Thank you, Councillor Gerwing. On to strategic priorities, unless we have more council reports. All right, anything on strategic priorities? I will mention that we have our strategic planning plan for March 27th, so we'll be diligently working on that as a council and staff. Public news media question and answer period. Any questions concerning the regional municipality, our budget, our priorities set by council, or agenda business? Yes, Ms. Vandersteen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. Loud and clear.
Excellent. First, I have to apologize because I think this was more appropriately should have been in the the public period at the front of the meeting. But I just wanted to say that some of you may have seen today the provincial government has proclaimed this week, May 13th to 17th, to be Chamber of Commerce Week in British Columbia. I didn't request a proclamation from council. However, I did want to ensure you were aware, as we all know that chambers across the province and country work hard on behalf of business and community. And I wanted to take a minute to thank our member businesses and board of directors for their work, as well as thank regional council for your ongoing support and recognitions of the contributions of local business. So thank you.
We'll echo that thanks out to you, Ms. Vandersteen. And thank you for bringing that up. That would have been a miss. Anything else from the public? All right. Well, I would like to, I guess can I permanently adjourn to move, or do I temporarily adjourn? I'll temporarily adjourn our regional council meeting to move back into our in-camera committee of the whole meeting. Can I get a motion to temporarily close the meeting, please? Moved by Councillor Roper, seconded by Councillor Souls. All in favor? Carried.